Imagine waking up 100,000 years ago, with no supermarket, no refrigerator, no food labels, and absolutely no idea which plants could kill you. Every meal was a decision between finding enough food to survive and accidentally eating something that could make you seriously sick. And the most important question was incredibly simple: how did they know what they could eat? The answer was not one single discovery, but thousands of generations of observation, experimentation, memory, and sometimes painful mistakes. Ancient humans were not simply wandering around eating whatever looked tasty. They watched animals, studied their environment, and remembered which foods appeared during different seasons. Animals could provide clues, but copying them was never completely safe. A plant that was harmless to one animal could still be dangerous to a human. So humans developed another powerful survival tool: memory. Imagine a child watching their parents gather berries, roots, nuts, insects, shellfish, and leaves. The child was learning something that could eventually mean the difference between life and death. And this knowledge could be surprisingly detailed. They could learn which leaves were safe, which roots needed preparation, which fruits were edible, and which plants should simply be left alone. But plants were only one part of the problem. Finding meat was difficult, dangerous, and exhausting. A successful hunt could provide enough food for an entire group. But a failed hunt could mean going hungry for another day. And hunting a large animal was not just difficult, it could be deadly. One wrong move could turn the hunter into the hunted. That is why ancient humans also learned to study animal behavior. They learned where animals traveled, where they drank, when they migrated, and where they were easiest to approach. But even after finding food, another problem remained: was it safe to eat? Before cooking became common, raw food could carry parasites and harmful microorganisms. Humans could not see bacteria with their eyes, so they had to learn from consequences. If a certain food repeatedly made people sick, the group could eventually learn to avoid it. This is one of the most important ideas in human survival: knowledge could be shared. One person's experience could protect dozens of other people. And this meant that survival knowledge could become part of a group's traditions. But there was another discovery that completely changed the human relationship with food: fire. Cooking could make some foods easier to chew and digest. It also helped reduce some of the dangers associated with eating raw meat. Fire also opened up foods that were difficult or impossible to eat raw. But fire did not solve everything. Some plants remained poisonous even after preparation. And some foods had to be processed in specific ways before they became safe or useful. Roots were especially valuable because they could remain underground even when other food disappeared. But finding a root was not enough, you had to know which one you were looking at. Some dangerous plants looked almost identical to harmless ones. This made plant knowledge incredibly valuable. And there was another challenge that modern humans rarely think about: seasons. A food that was everywhere in summer could completely disappear in winter. Animals also changed their behavior with the seasons. So survival meant remembering not only what was edible, but when it could be found. Spring could bring young plants and insects. Summer could provide fruits, berries, fish, and abundant vegetation. Autumn could become a race to collect and store as much food as possible. And winter could turn every meal into a serious problem. This is why humans did something unusual: they became extremely flexible eaters. If one food disappeared, they could search for another. If animals became scarce, plants and underground foods could become more important. If the land became dry, rivers and coastlines could become lifelines. Water itself could be dangerous too. Clean-looking water was not always truly safe. Again, experience mattered. Humans also learned to recognize signs that food was no longer fresh. A strange smell, unusual color, or obvious decay could become a warning. But ancient humans did not have modern ideas about germs, contamination, or nutrition. They had something much more practical: observation. They watched what happened after people ate certain foods. They watched which animals survived after eating particular plants. They watched where fish gathered and where shellfish could be found. They watched the sky, the weather, and the movement of animals. Over thousands of years, these observations became an enormous library of survival knowledge. And perhaps the most important part was that nobody had to learn everything alone. A skilled hunter could teach tracking. A skilled gatherer could teach plants. Someone experienced with fire could teach everyone how to cook. And someone who understood the seasons could help the group prepare for difficult months. This cooperation gave humans an advantage that individual animals often did not have. Humans could combine the experiences of many different individuals. One person discovered something. Another person remembered it. And a child could eventually learn it without ever making the original mistake. That is one of the hidden powers of human culture. We do not have to personally experience every danger to learn from it. We can learn from someone who came before us. And that may have saved countless lives. But survival was never guaranteed. A drought could destroy plants. A harsh winter could make hunting almost impossible. A storm could destroy a campsite. And a single injury could suddenly change everything. If a hunter could no longer walk, the entire group might have to adapt. This is why survival was never just about strength. It was about knowing your environment. It was about remembering what worked. It was about avoiding what had failed. And most importantly, it was about sharing that knowledge. So the next time you walk into a supermarket and see thousands of foods with labels telling you exactly what they are, remember how strange that would have looked to our ancestors. For most of human history, there were no labels. There were no nutrition charts. There were no expiration dates. And there was no delivery app waiting to bring dinner to your door. Every meal depended on thousands of tiny decisions. Which plant? Which animal? Which season? Which water? And perhaps the most important question of all, what had your ancestors already learned? Because every generation inherited more than tools and shelter. They inherited memories of what to eat, what to avoid, where to hunt, and when to move. And over an unimaginably long period of time, those lessons helped humans survive environments that could be brutally unforgiving. They did not know about biology, chemistry, bacteria, or calories. But they knew something even more important: what happened when they tried something. They watched. They remembered. They adapted. And they taught the next generation. And that may be one of the greatest survival skills humans ever developed, not simply knowing how to find food, but knowing how to learn from the world around us.